Hey guys, how you doing? This is Darron Brown, your host of the podcast Philosophy for Life. I have a great guest with me. This is my very first affirmation artist. Her name is Toni Jones, and we're going to talk about mental health and also talk about her music journey and how things have changed. I know you were a coach before early on in your career, but now you're an artist. So tell me a little bit about that. How did that change?
Yeah, so I was a life coach for several years and I prayed to God and I said, God, give me an idea to help my clients practice wellness on the go. And honestly, that prayer came about because I was doing all the life coach how to's, creating courses, doing one-on-ones, creating ebooks, and I was working really, really hard to make some level of success as a life coach, preaching wellness, if you will. I was helping women heal from workaholism, but I was doing that during the era where it was all about getting to the bag. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Before wellness and mental health became really mainstream, it was not popular, if you will. So that prayer came about me being exhausted with trying to have some level of success in something I knew I was good at. And so I think it happened like within an hour or so, and it was affirmation music. And I was like, oh my God, that's a
Hmm.
cool idea. And I went straight to my laptop and Googled it. And it was not even a terminology that was Googleable. So I was like, wait a minute, I get to do this. Like, I'm the person that gets to coin this phrase and kind of like spearhead this genre of positive self talk through music. Not the first one to do something like this, but definitely coining it and crafting a sound for how self talk can sound modern over music, and be a vibe. I definitely own that because it's definitely brought me so much joy. And I really just wanted to be a successful life coach, and it transitioned me into being an affirmation musician. I was like, what is that? And I
Hmm.
discovered it by just being curious of what was possible to serve my clients.
Did affirmations play any role in your life before you became a musician?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was listening to Reverend, listening to Abraham Hicks, Les Brown, Chanel Cooper Sykes. These are all individuals that Byron Katie, these are all people that advocated for self empowerment. And so, and a couple of them were definitely advocates for uh, affirmations.
I want to know a little bit more about your inspirations. What are some artists that really inspired you growing up? Like, what kind of music did you listen to?
I listened to gospel. I grew up in a very religious household. I grew up in church, and not like church is like something you do on Sundays. I'm talking about church was a lifestyle, 24/7. Okay, choir rehearsal, Bible study, conferences, vacation Bible school, and so my influence were like people like Yolanda Adams, CC Winans, the Clark sisters. My dad used to be a DJ in his younger years, so he always had records playing like Barry White, Anita Baker,
Mhm.
Sade, just old school jams. So that was like my musical influence growing up. The Winans.
Yeah, I know about all of them. That's the
Uh,
soul music. That's why I asked you. I want to know if you had any kind of like influences from back in the day, because the R&B music from back then was a lot more soulful, a lot more passionate. Timeless
yes,
music. So
yes,
you're from Detroit, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
So how was it growing up in Detroit? Somebody like myself that's from the West Coast. Um, I mean, we all have stereotypes all around the country. California, gangster, Bloods, Crips, but then Detroit also has like it stands for a few different things. It has violence, that's a part of it, but then also Detroit has like some of the best boxers to ever come out, just some of the best American boxers period have come out of Detroit. So I know that there's a lot of talent in Detroit, just the economics
Mm.
kind of played a part into why things fell apart. But how was it growing up in Detroit?
Well, I grew up in Metro Detroit and spent a lot of my time in the churches in Detroit. Grew up in, I went to schools in like, you guys probably won't know this area, but Southfield, Michigan. I was born in Grand Rapids. But how I was growing up, I was really sheltered. Like growing up in the church, being a church girl,
Really?
it was like I was groomed to be green, have a green perspective on life. And
Mhm.
not that I didn't see things, but I just didn't have the perception of judging it a certain type of way. I just found out. I just found
Okay.
out. I just found out a couple weeks ago. BMF went to my church, and I was like, I was like, wait a minute, those are the guys who wore all black and these chains. I was like, I had no idea. But they always sat in a certain area at the church, but I never thought of them as a gang because they didn't represent themselves that way.
Yeah.
They represented themselves as a brotherhood. So I just thought they were all related or something. So I was very green growing up. So a lot of the violence I did not see, even the poverty that I witnessed within my family. Um, I didn't have the space to have conversations about it. It was no one talked about these things. Why some of my family members didn't have, why poverty existed, why we were hungry sometimes. It was like a way of life. So it wasn't until I got older where I became conscious, where it was just like, wait a minute, that is not normal. And that is
Mhm.
not healthy. So as far as the stereotypes of Detroit, I think it's like any other um, urban neighborhood in America where it's like a certain social engineering aspects of the culture within those urban neighborhoods where it becomes part of our identity,
I see.
because that's what we experience. So the violence, the poverty, what I'm saying, the lack of family and healthy social structures, that's part of the American urban society, unfortunately. But the stereotypes, it's still art. Still beautiful things come out of that.
Mhm.
Motown came at a time where it was chaos, hopelessness, despair. We're the Motor City. So no matter what the stereotypes are, we put on whatever city, good still comes out of it.
I hear you. Growing up as a church girl, like how did that impact your romantic relationships?
Now we get into the nitty gritty of the conversation. It impacted me big time, Darren. Like impacted me big time. This is a passionate topic that I like to talk about, especially in my membership group, because it impacted my entire life. Growing up, being raised to be a wife, my preparation for adulthood was believe in Jesus so you don't go to hell. Stay a virgin till you get married and get good grades. That's not the best toolbox for life. And so, and I was married for 8 years, and so for me, I approach life in a marital way. So a lot of my relationships romantically, I approached them with the marital skills that I was taught. Wasn't taught to vet men or to be able to assess men's character. Um, I I spoke things from my character, from my integrity, from my soul, and I assumed, based on how I grew up, that is how people who are engaging with me positively, they move the same way, and that is not
Yeah.
how that is not that is not how it works. There are certain type of skill sets and discernment that you have to gauge people's character and consistency, who they are. You have to take your time to get to know people. I over evaluated chemistry, instead of getting to know people. So I wasn't really raised to understand what the dating romantic scene and really the culture of a man's mentality and how he has been programmed and raised to engage with women I had no construct of understanding that. You know, I did. Go ahead.
I was going to say that whether you grew up in the church or not, and whether that you're man or female, all of us are kind of to an extent we've been conditioned to believe that an ideal partner looks like this or an ideal relationship looks like this. And
Yeah.
when we get into the real world, we realize that it's not, because I know what you're talking about when you say like those feelings of excitement, admiration. And because of those feelings, you kind of you aren't patient. You kind of rush into a relationship, or you kind of open up too soon.
Yeah.
You really don't let that person earn your trust, and you don't really truly vet that person. That's something
Hmm.
that that unfortunately society doesn't teach us. And if you don't have the parents with the information, they're not teaching that as well. But you have to learn how to vet people, and you
Hmm.
also need to know how to handle maturely handle those, like, I want to say romantic, exciting feelings you get when you first meet somebody. When you get that catapult, that thunderbolt when you see
Yeah.
somebody that you're really into.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I get it. Um, what I want to know, if you can break down your divorce into one word, can you give me a reason why why you needed to end that relationship? Did you end the relationship?
Hmm.
Okay, in one word, why did you need to get out? If you can.
Salvation.
Okay, elaborate.
Um, it got to a point where it was like either I save my marriage or save my soul, and there was no negotiating me. You know what I'm saying? There was no negotiating that decision. It was I have to
Mhm.
save my soul. I had no kids, no property with this man. I was doing all the work, and I was like, yeah, like I changed, and I didn't like who I was changing into, you
Yeah.
know? And so it was like, I don't know how I'm going to figure my life out, but I'm going to save myself by getting out of this marriage. So I saved myself.
Salvation. I get
Salvation.
it.
I
I get
still
it. I
look at
get
it that way. I
it.
like when I'm telling you when there's days where the self critic is like you need to do more, you haven't done enough. All I have to do is think about getting that divorce, and I feel like I cure cancer because that decision, that one decision, changed the whole trajectory of my entire life.
Mhm.
And being a church girl, being a part of that culture, not all the women make it out without kids. Not all the women, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I literally was a hero to myself with that decision. You know?
Was he a church going man?
Yeah.
Okay, so he checked all the boxes. Probably good looking, church going. You thought you guys had the same values, etc. Was he a good? Well, I don't want to say that. Was the marriage? Because I've had a few women on my show now who have had divorces, and they all have different reasons. But what I'm wondering is, was it a good marriage or a bad marriage?
It was unhealthy.
Okay, unhealthy. All right, because what I've noticed is that there are some women that have been on my show that have had good marriages and they divorced their husband. And they divorced their husbands because they felt like they were losing themselves within that marriage as well. They felt like they wanted to expand, they wanted to grow, they wanted to be free basically, and that relationship kept them trapped.
Yeah, the brand of marriage and a wife really it's a beautiful brand of either slavery or replay of of a man's mother. They brand it to look a certain way for women to identify their womanhood by, and it's not fair to who we are as individuals and who we are outside of our gender. We're humans,
Yeah.
and so when you're bogged down by this identity of servitude to this grown individual and you don't get that mutually back, it can be very damaging. I've seen it all the time as a life coach, as a sister, as a friend. Like I've seen women go through a lot of emotional soul level suicide because of feeling trapped in their marriage.
So what I get from that is that there are women who are wives, traditional wives, that feel like they're being taken for granted or taken advantage of.
Yeah. Yeah. Simply
You
put.
know, okay. I'm gonna pivot because we can keep going down this.
Yeah, we could.
Because I was telling a friend of mine, because I'm usually, what you're basically telling me is you're a giver in a relationship. You like to give to the person that you're in love with, but you want the person you're with to give as well. And I was telling a friend of mine, I had an experience where I was the giver, and then I
Hmm.
looked into it because I'm so focused on things like this podcast, other things that I'm doing. And when my partner tells me they need something, I'll give it to them. But then I paused and I looked. I was like, man, I'm not getting anything out of this. It's just, I'm hot, so love me, give me what I want. But I think you kind of nailed it a little bit when you said earlier that um, when you basically let somebody in, you really didn't vet the person, but because they had these check boxes, you had the experience and you were excited, you kind of let that person into your life. But giving is one of the main things that helps a relationship stay healthy. Giving from both partners, and that's something that both men and women need. Now,
Reciprocity.
reciprocity, no doubt. So, I want to talk a little bit more about. I think this was your life coach business. It was called "Make Your Wife Your Life." Is it
Wife your life.
"Wife Your Life"?
Yes.
Why did you name it that?
Because there's a scripture in Proverbs 31 that talks about this ideal woman. And growing up in church, all the women and men know about Proverbs 31 because it's supposed to be like this blueprint of the perfect wife. And really, it just talks about who she was as a woman, not necessarily all the descriptions of who she was as her role being married, even though it touches on that. And so I took that, like growing up, all I wanted to do was be a wife. I wanted to be a wife and a mother my whole entire life up until 2022, summer of 2022. That desire was no longer a part of my identity. And
Mm,
um, so when I think I had just wrapped up a relationship. I don't know what year it was, but I wrapped up a relationship, which is a whole nother story. I realized, like, what have I been doing for 10 years? And I'm like, oh, I've been trying to make relationships with men work. And I was like, what if everything that I was doing for them, what if I turned that back to me? What if I became my own wife? And I was like, what would happen then? And once I started doing that, my life started returning back that energy to me. And I'm like, man, everything that I was doing for a man got me nowhere besides these higher level conscious lessons, grateful, but it came about in traumatic ways. Whereas when I was giving what I was giving to them to myself, I saw fruit. I saw love come back to me. I saw abundance coming back to me. And I was like, oh, I have to become my own wife. So I wanted to help women learn how to, shift their focus, shift their mindset, shift their psychology and energy towards themselves. And that relationship you will memorize that feeling of what it feels like to be in a relationship with yourself. So anything that does not feel that way, it will repel you because it does not feel like the energy of your own relationship with yourself.
Lovely. I know exactly what you're talking about. Basically, you were self-sacrificing, but then once you kind of moved away from that relationship, it allowed you to uh, heal and focus on loving yourself. Being good to
Yes.
yourself. And then once you did that, you resonated with that feeling. Once you resonate at that vibration, you can kind of feel the vibe of other people around you. So you
Yeah.
already have a sense of, okay, this isn't good for me, and it's easier to walk away once you have that relationship with yourself.
Well, I would say this. I That was my first experience, my first phase of like initiating into that type of self relationship, self love. I've had many bumps in the road because I'm going against an old paradigm of so many decades of being conditioned to self sacrifice. So, trust and believe, I wrestled with this new paradigm of how to approach my life. So many times it was not looking like self love. Self sacrifice still wanted to live on through me because that's all I knew that was familiar, you know? And so I'm still a student to self love. I'm still a student to devotion to what is true and healthy for me. You know, I haven't mastered anything yet. I'm still like learning different ways I abandon myself for others. I'm still learning how I don't speak up to make others uncomfortable. I'm still learning how to master that. It's like it keeps being learned on a deeper level for me to embody it and practice it in my daily life, you know?
Nah, 1000% no. And I don't know if that journey will ever truly end
Right.
because I've been on something similar to that. You know, there's like layers and layers. And once you become, once you awaken, put it like that, once you awaken, you can see things clearly. You not only are conscious of the people you give your body to, but you're also conscious of like your friendships, your romantic relation. I mean, your family relationships. Um, Even along that journey, you may try to bring people with you or try to get some kind of help them get some kind of understanding because it's a lonely journey, you know, and then it's not something that people talk about. So it's not like you're going to easily find people who are also consciously walking down that path. But yeah, as long as you're following down that road, there's always going to be things that make you uncomfortable, challenge you, and force you to consistently become a new you.
Hmm.
Are you still helping women with this? Wife your life.
No, no,
Okay, so you since moved it.
I don't have a life coaching business where I work with women one on one, but I do have an online membership group.
Okay, so why music? I understand that you were using music to help you build or call get some kind of attention for your business. But why music? Is there like a does music have a deeper meaning for you?
Well, when I created the first album, Affirmations for the Grown Ass Woman, that was supposed to be a tool that I use for my coaching business. When I realized I was receiving passive income from this and how it was spreading without me doing much, because I was going through hell during the time that was released, I wasn't promoting it. Like, you know, my mental health was compromised. Once I started seeing passive income happening, once I started to really enjoy the process of creating music without overthinking it, I was like, wow, I want to do this. Life coaching is something I'm good at, but life coaching is not something I love, you know?
Mhm.
And so I was like, but I love the process of creating music. I love receiving money with the least effort, doing the least things that you know what I'm saying? And affirmation music was like, it's something that I would do whether I got paid for it or not. I love it that much. And I discovered that. And so when I was measuring, like, what do I really want to do in 2020? I was like, I want to give this music thing a try. And so I think around 2020, was it 2021? I think it was around 2021 where I shifted to changing my life coach being business into an online membership.
I want to talk about the names of some of the songs that you made. You have a it's funny, I was going through your albums. You know, like you said, the first one was Affirmation for Grown Ass Woman. Second one is I See Me Mantra.
Hmm.
Three, Me versus Everybody. And the title for one, I want to know like what inspired some of the titles. The specifically the first album. Let's go through that first. Fuck Boys Are Tools for Enlightenment.
Hmm.
No is Bay. So what was going on in your life at that time? And then what inspired these titles?
So I dealt with my unique choices of men who you could label as fuckboys. And I just couldn't understand why these men who I was connecting with, who were so excited about connecting with me, would play these games. And I just did not understand it. I'm like, I'm a person. Why would you treat me this way? And it was no matter how good of a person, genuine of a person I was, it was not enough for them to practice integrity with me. And so
Mhm.
I felt like just completely mistreated, misvalued. And I just felt like it played into some of my childhood wounds, my insecurities, and it just took my self esteem down. But then after doing some healing work and going into some healing programs, um, I started to have a higher consciousness of those engagements and scenarios with these men. And I'm like, yo, these men are being used for me to be enlightened about my patterns, my choices with men, that I'm not a victim to them. I'm making a choice to engage with them and hold space for the bullshit. And why am I doing that? That's my accountability. That's my responsibility to be enlightened to why am I holding space for men who are not being friends to me, who are not being lovers to me. They're not being kind. And I'm being that way. Why do I like that? Why do I want that? Want more of their time when I'm not being valued? So I had to figure out what those whys were. And then I realized, oh, these men are tools. They're tools. They're literally being used for a higher purpose for me being enlightened to come back home to myself and learn the patterns that pretty much direct my choices with men.
Today, try not to be all in your business, but today, do you vet men differently today when it comes to relationships?
Um, I don't vet men at all because I don't engage with men in that way. I'm so far past that timeline of being, desiring men. Because, like I said, summer 2022, my desire for men and family, nuclear family, completely changed. I
Mm.
experienced a heartbreak that changed me forever. And it helped me to see how much my desire for the nuclear family was really early conditioning and programming. And so I see men differently now. They're
Mm.
not just a romantic potential. I see them for their own human nature. And based on their human nature, I see how, colonialism, the Western world, white supremacy has programmed a man's identity as a masculine being. And so I'm not attracted
Mm.
to the way that men embody that program. So I'm more, I'm like soul, spirit, energy, kind of like, it's like I'm more attracted to community. I'm more attracted to sisterhood. My romance is experienced in friendships now. So as far as intimacy and looking at men as a potential experience of intimacy, I haven't landed where I'm at as far as my beliefs around that because I don't know. I'm still wondering because
Yeah.
for so long my identity was like, who's gonna be my husband? Who's gonna partner with me? Who can I build a life with, create a life with? And when I let go of that version of me, I felt lost, and in all the right ways because I found who I truly am. And so I feel like I'm still exploring. I'm still dealing with tender parts of my heart. I'm still healing in ways where I'm doing my best to not be a bitter bitch. You know what I'm saying? And I hate men. So it's a really fine,
Mhm.
delicate line that I'm playing right now. So when it comes to men, I don't look at men like, ooh, like I'm like, I'm not attracted to them in that way.
I understand you've been hurt, but then one thing that one thing that relationships do is that they help you grow. Like nothing challenges you more than a romantic relationship, for better or worse. You've had
I
a few
believe it's the I believe it's the highest spiritual practice, our relationships.
yeah. Yes, it's a challenge. It's challenging for all of us. And
Yes.
for better or worse, if you have a bad relationship, you're going to learn from that relationship. And even if you have a healthy one, you can learn from that as well, because that's going to teach you how to be loved, love and be loved in a relationship. It's
Hmm.
regardless of what your experience looks like, you're going to learn something
Hmm.
within that relationship.
Absolutely.
Okay, so within the second album, it says "I see me" mantra. You say, I like the title that you have there is "I'm so ugly, beautiful." What inspired that?
Um, Gosh, it just seeing the parts of me that are not so beautiful, like the parts of me that I did not feel like I could change, the parts of me that I have felt shame about, the parts of me that I wanted to keep in the dark. But I had to find a way to genuinely have gratitude and compassion and grace for those parts of me and include them too into how I define beauty, you know? And once I was able to do that, gather those parts of me, not just one time, but over and over and over and over and over again, gathering those parts of me that I want to keep in the closet, the parts of me that I want to keep in the dark, and love them and bring them into the illumination of love and light. I was able to see, yo, these parts could put me on game. These parts really they cause a wisdom that is undeniable, a beauty that it cannot be defined. So it made me realize like my beauty deep, is so deep. And so I was like, but you have to go into the darkness to allow that beauty to be that deep. So everything that I would think that was ugly, everything that I judged that was ugly about me, things that men probably thought were ugly or whatever the case may be, I saw them as beauty because of what they alchemized into when I chose to love those parts of me.
What parts of you were you hiding?
How much of a pick Misha I was, how thirsty I was, how attached I get, you know, how I manipulate to for connection and intimacy, you know, how my childhood wounds were running my money habits. Um, yeah, like those type of things, you know, the things that people don't want to be honest about. But it's like certain pain just over and just throughout the years, certain pain just it wore me down to the white meat where I was just like, I don't have any more I don't have the strength to put on mask anymore, you
Mm,
know? And so my heart is just so raw and open that I just gotta be real, you know? So those are the parts of me that I would would have wanted to kept hidden at that time.
I understand. I see. To your third album now, Me versus Every Me.
Mhm.
I like that title. Every Me. What do you mean?
To basically to what I've been saying, these versions of me, like life is has a cyclical nature. Nothing about it is linear. So you're going through the self-love process and that personal intimate relationship with you is saying yes to 1,000 deaths, 1,000 rebirths. Everything in life is about that cycle. Anything that's growing, it dies. Anything that's growing, it rebirths. Flowers, nature, seeds, all those things that are alive. And so the same thing with us, that we go through that cycle of that natural process of growth. So for me, I've met different versions of me over and over again. My 6-year-old self may come up in a certain relationship, or something that may happen in 2018 may be triggered, and I have to again forgive that timeline, again have to reintegrate the newfound wisdoms that I have to bring grace to those parts of me that may be still tender, maybe still spoiled, or whatever the case may be. But it's like Me Versus Every Me was all about gathering all the versions of me that I hate, all the versions of me that I love, and bring them all in the living room and say, no matter whether I can change you, perfect you, or amplify you, I'm going to give you all grace. I'm going to give you all equal love. And I'm gonna bring you all into the oneness of wholeness, and believe that you're all equally worthy of my devotion and attention and care. So Me Versus Ever Me was about the white flag. It was like, I'm done with hating you, some of y'all, loving some of y'all, and so that cycle of rebirth and dying to yourself is I don't even know how to put it into words. You have to
No,
go through the journey to understand
that
it.
was beautifully said. Me versus me, because when I think about my childhood, you know, I felt, even though I wasn't perfect, I felt just like the last guy I had on my show, calls it spiritual awakening. I felt so powerful when I was a kid, and I'm still doing cool things, but I know that a part of me I have left down the road, or I've suppressed a part of me, and
Mm,
I've been working on basically integrating that part of my character into who I am now. And when you say me versus me, and you make the statement loving all different types of me, it was just making me think about my own journey. And in order for you to be full and be complete, you have to come eye to eye with the different versions of who you are, and
mm-hmm.
to accept and love the different versions of who you are, because ultimately
You
that's going to
got
make
to.
you a dynamic and powerful person.
You got to. Yep.
You have to. Within the church, do you think that the church in some way made you suppress parts of you that you didn't even know existed?
Yes. Absolutely.
How is
Absolutely.
it how is it for a young woman growing up in the church? Like, what is expected of her? What how much control does she have over because I'm in Utah. I'm in Mormon state, so the church literally controls the entire state. So you can see, like, Mormons have a certain look, certain way of dressing, certain way of carrying themselves. They're not really There's not a high level of freedom, way more freedom than it used to be. But I want to say, for a woman growing up in Detroit in the church, a young woman, like, what kind of things is she dealing with socially?
Yeah, you're performing. You're performing, you're people pleasing, you're self sacrificing. You get your validation from that. And validation is a part of, in psychology, validation from peers, from family is a part of human happiness throughout your lifetime. So it's nothing, that's not something that's not required in life. But when you receive a very valid part of your human happiness from performing, putting on masks and self-sacrificing and people pleasing, and that is how you receive that validation, it's it feels violent when you stop doing it, because now you have to set boundaries, and now you have to have faith that you can put yourself first and still receive love, but in healthier ways that include your well-being and your welfare, even if you've never experienced that. And so for me, growing up in the church, I just witnessed so many women. Everybody just seemed miserable. I never met a happy church woman. Like, everybody seemed miserable. That's one of the things of why I transitioned out of the church, because I still felt the texture of my inner girl. And I was like, man, I want her to maintain a pure, happy heart. I don't know how the heck I'm gonna do it, but it ain't doing what they doing. And they get married, having kids, and going to
Mm-hmm.
church and going to work, and no hate, no shade. But I was like, that ain't for me. I can't, I cannot see a life for myself where I'm miserable and feel all that I am inside. I felt like I would just explode. So
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like young girls, women of all ages feel suppressed by organized religion, but that suppression is not always felt because they're conditioned to identify themselves with those structures.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have some type of awakening to break free in thought to think something else.
I do know. I want to know this. When you broke away from the church, did you
Hmm.
get any kind of pushback from people in the church? Or are you still a part of the
No,
church?
no, I'm not. I am the church.
Part of the church.
I left
Okay.
the church to become the church. No, I didn't, surprisingly, but it was a slow process. I mean, I've had some heated conversations with some relatives, like some intense conversations, but everybody knew me. Like they know I moved to my own beat. Like that's always who I've been. So you can't tell me what to do once I have it in my mind that this
Mhm.
is the path for me, and that whatever ends up happening, it was my choice to go this path. And so for me, it was like, if you want me to stay in church, show me why. And no one could show me why. Like I'm like, you're not happy. You're not in your
Mhm.
purpose. You can't it's all in your face. So when you start going to church and you start feeling community and supported and abundance and fulfilling, then holler at me. You know what I mean? So for me, there was no argument or any type of intense pushback. Just some here conversations here, maybe 3 to 4 conversations with family members over the years, but nothing intense for real.
Let's talk about your next album that's coming out this July.
Hmm.
What is do we have a title of that album? And then also what is this album going to be resonate? Like what is it going to be about?
It's called Affirmations for Liberation. You heard it here first. And this album is all about my journey of liberating myself over and over again. Um, when it comes to intimacy, when it comes to mastering my energy, when it comes to defining my femininity, who I am as a woman, when it comes to being enslaved to those inner prisons that oppress us, to not that keep us hesitant to explore our potential, because I feel like everybody has this tiny whisper, I am more, there is more, but you don't really have any literacy to go about what that feeling, what that whisper is. And so this album has some songs in there that gives us permission to liberate ourselves, to explore whatever that is and abandon whatever structures of order that we try to sustain to feel safe and feel like we're in control. And so
Mm.
affirmations of liberation is like, it's like the soundtrack to this journey into liberation. It's not a lot of us are anti-system. A lot of messages like on social media are anti-system, anti-government. We got to be free. We got to liberate it from who's are in control. And it's not about that. It's all about the only way out is in. That's the true liberation, is going
Mm.
within yourselves and liberating yourself from the self-hate that you learned, the self-criticism that you've learned, the self-shaming, the like bullying yourself into productivity. All of these things that happen within this world right here, start there to create the change in the world. And so this album is really personal for me because I've been on a long, I haven't put out an album since 2021. And so this process, even the process of decentering men while trying not to disconnect from men and be a man hater. That's been a journey. So I'm liberating myself from that, you know, that program of centering men around everything. So this album is very personal, but it is very universal as well, because people are appetizing for liberation. People are appetizing for a sense of peace in life on a personal level and a collective level.
One second, let me fix my camera.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what that was all about. It showed me blinking. But liberation. You know, you're talking about those inner can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. You're talking about the inner prisons. And what that made me think about was anxiety. Because
Yeah.
a lot of people know what they should say, they know what they should do, and they feel like an impulse to actually act on it, but then there's something anchoring them and preventing them from actually taking action, doing those different things. So, you know, your album Liberation, or the meaning behind your album with the word liberation, it I think that really at a real deep level, a lot of people are all suffering from a lack of self identity. And because they don't know themselves, they try to attach to any kind of social movement or any kind of cultural expectation. For example, where I'm from, most people have dreads, gold teeth, and I want to say hoodies. And I remember how people used to dress before that in my neighborhood. People still had like the Jerry curls and the fitted hats, you know what I'm saying? Then it was the waves. But what I saw is that people who really are trying to find themselves to be a part of something, they usually just attach to certain things, certain movements, and certain labels. And ultimately, if you are going to go through this this self improvement journey, this this path of awakening, you have to consistently liberate yourself and in increments. What I want to know
Yeah.
for you, has it become easier for you? Because when you first started this journey, you broke away from being that traditional woman, traditional wife, doing all that stuff. You did make those changes, didn't happen overnight. I want to
Mm-hmm.
say, for who you are today, like, is it easier for you to see an issue, be aware of your feelings, and actually I want to say act on, yeah, is it easier for you to act on the way you feel now compared to how it was when you were first starting this journey?
Yes. It's definitely matured. I'm able to regulate in real time. And sometimes I'm not able to regulate in real time, like my nervous system, but I'm able to take space to process whatever triggers, whatever feelings I have. And if it's another party involved in that, I'm able to speak that, but I'm also requiring certain aspects from those individuals sometimes to create a safe space where we can talk about the things that brought up conflict, trigger disagreements, and so on. So those skill sets were built over time. And I'm still identifying the areas that they can improve. And I'm just like, wow, this really is a journey. There is no destination to expanding in these self mastery skill sets, you know. So I would definitely say that's one of my things that I'm very proud about. How far I've gotten in these skill sets. Still have a way to go, but definitely matured in that way.
I want to talk about mental health awareness. Like, why is mental health so important for you?
Mental health is so important because I personally experienced mental health crisis. I dealt with suicidal ideation. I've taken attempts on my life in my adulthood. And it was always because it was triggered by life events, but I always had this dormant feeling of like, yo, this life is some bullshit. Like everything that everybody think is normal, I see insanity in all of it. Like I never, there was just certain things I was just disenchanted with capitalism, disenchanted with certain systems of our society, that I was just like, yo, this is actually madness, and we think this is order. So for me, I always had this dormant thought of like, yo, if I check out, I'll be done.
Mm-hmm.
I ain't got to play this game no more. So when life events would occur that would just send my nervous system to hell, I would just be like, yeah, I'm out. I'm good on all of this. And so I mental health is so important for me because I'm such a wise seek, like I'm a wisdom seeker, and I'm all about um, spiritual empowerment. And a lot of times these concepts and these that type of expansive awareness can cause a spiritual psychosis, you know, and where you're aware of too much, where you're not finding the bliss in the present moment. So mental health for me is about grounding myself back into my body, back into my play, back into my fun, back into the joy of just being human, just being alive, and being grateful for what is. And so mental health, having a therapist, helps me ground all of this enlightenment, all of this awareness, all this wisdom and experience, and bring it right back to the simple moments of having access to water and fruit and travel and just being able to be mobile and not
Mm-hmm.
get a phone call that somebody died today, you know, like just ground. The therapist helps me do that. So I think mental health is so important because we're such an overly informed generation that we need to sometimes quiet the noise and bring ourselves back to, how am I doing? How am I feeling? Where's my mental health at? You know?
You know, the thing that got me when I realized that society, the way the system is structured is bullshit is because we're never free. Once we get into kindergarten, it's like 8 hours
Yeah.
of our day is taken from us for the rest of our lives. It's like, man, when do I escape, and when am I free so I can really start being a human? You know, I can explore the different areas of my personality. You know, I can travel. You know, I can do things on impulse that I feel like I'm spiritually inclined to do. But the way our society is structured is that we're all basically we're all workers. We're all workers trying to keep this thing, whatever it is, above water. We never really truly get a break.
Right.
I want to know: do you see yourself as a mental health advocate?
Yes.
How do you help people with mental health through your music?
Um, I use certain words. I use my intentions. I use my knowledge around how music is has a medicinal legacy when it comes to the health of one's psychology. And I incorporate that in the process of creating my music. So at the push of play, immediately takes someone to a mood, a vibe, where their psychology starts to rewire to that mood. Because once the brain feels a feeling that it likes, it wants more of that. And so they keep pushing play, they keep listening to this music, and they start to see the fruits of the actions and behaviors that come from that feeling that they get when they push play that music, because they're changing the inner dialogue of what they say to themselves, you know. And
Yeah.
so that is, you know, I'm a human behavior nerd. If you couldn't tell, I got my degree in psychology and I study neuroscience and all of those things. And so I incorporate that into my process of creating my music.
So brain rewiring. You studied human psychology, so you have a good sense of human nature, and then
Mhm.
neural. I've had a few neural. I don't know what you call it, neurologists. I know one of them was a professor at Or he did Diego. What did he do? He did research at Harvard and Princeton, and now he's in France doing it. But basically, you're talking about brain rewiring, right? Like rewiring
Hmm.
your brain to think.
Neuroplasticity. It's called
Neuroplasticity.
it's called neuroplasticity. Yes.
Okay.
Brain rewiring is another simple term to describe, neuroplasticity.
Okay. Okay. Cool. I wanted to ask you this earlier, but it slipped my mind. On the internet right now, we have this battle between men and women. You know, I will say this personally before I ask this question. For me personally, I haven't had many bad experiences with women. I would say that most of my early younger relationships ended because of me. And it was because I was selfish. I was focused on first, I thought I was the shit. I thought I'm a good looking dude. I'm an athlete playing college ball. You have a lot of attention as an athlete. And it can kind of make you a little narcissistic as I guess even just thinking about my childhood. I was always like a decent athlete, had a lot of attention. But I realized that, just now working on, I want to say when I got close to my when I got closer to my 30s and I was doing this self-improvement journey for like, since I was about 24, 25, I was able to look back and see, wow, there were some women that I could have had made my wife that I could have been with, but I was so focused on football, my career, the things I wanted to do that I wasn't really giving into that relationship. I was never I'm not a yeller, I'm not disrespectful, I'm not a cheater, but I can still make you feel alone by not placing your needs, prioritizing your
Mm,
needs. So I did that when I was like younger and I mean, you live you learn, but
mm,
I can't honestly say that I've had bad relationships with women or I feel like I'm going to like hate women because there are men on the internet. I have friends that are like, "Oh, screw women. These women ain't shit." Yada yada yada. And I didn't have that. I had good women. If there are women who are like that, most likely I just didn't even deal with them in the first place. But my thing, like I said, I was always focused on what I want to do, my goals, etc. And I didn't give my partner that same type of attention. Why Two questions. Do you hate man? I think that at one point you do you hate man? Do you have some kind of animosity
no, I
or
don't hate
man?
men. I hate their program.
Okay.
And
And
I
then what's
and
the
I don't
program?
use the word hate often. I may
What
say
is
it
the
maybe 3 times a year.
what is the program? Tell me what about the programming do you not like about the
The
American man?
the program is very the root of it is capitalism. The root of it is white supremacy. The root of it is colonialism. And so which makes you constantly in the lower parts of your nature. It supports a man identifying his manhood, his masculinity, his whole identity based on his lower nature, which is pleasure and survival. And so when you're approaching your life through the lens of pleasure and survival, which means sustainability, money, pleasure, sex, what feels good, you know what I'm saying? What gives you that, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah, I
turn
do.
me
I do.
on. And so when you identify with that and don't go into the higher levels of yourself, you end up causing harm to people, And so for me, self awareness is a higher level of being. But if you're constantly in survival mode, you're constantly seeking and searching out pleasure. You're operating from an animalistic level of way of approaching your life because that's what animals do. They fucking eat and survive. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what they do. They go hunt, they go find,
Mm.
and so much of the program is around, huh?
I was gonna say we don't have a society that really teaches because really what you're saying is that you want an individual or men they need to be more conscious basically more self-aware. The more conscious you are, the more aware of your decision making, you're more aware of how you feel and how you making people feel. And
Not just
what you're saying,
conscious, integral. Integral. I think integrity is better than it's. I think it's higher than consciousness.
I think when you become a higher conscious being, you become a person that has a lot more integrity. Because it's one thing to do wrong when you don't know, and it's another to do wrong when you do know. It's poisonous. If you know, if you're aware of all the evil that you're going to do and you act on that, it messes
Well,
up your
some
brain.
people. Well, here's the thing with that. I thought that too until I met conscious people who are aware of their ways, aware
Huh.
of their harm, but they believe in duality. They believe in balance. So they use spiritual consciousness to bypass, you know what I'm saying? The harm that
Yeah,
they cause others.
I'm learning now. I'm like I'm zoned.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like I've experienced conscious individuals who are aware of their darkness, aware of their ways, but they still do it because they believe it's part of their balance. It's part of their duality. They don't
uh,
use their awareness and consciousness of their darkness to integrate it and alchemize it. They use it as a way of being to excuse and bypass them to do whatever they want to do. You see what I'm
uh,
saying?
yes,
So those are the I didn't know that existed until I experienced it. That
okay.
you can be still self-aware and harm others, even in that self-awareness, even with that consciousness. That's why I say integrity, because integrity means that you have a constitution to abide by through empathy, through understanding, through otherness, where you consider yourself, but you consider your neighbor as well. What do they call it? Like the golden rule or something?
Yeah,
And so I think people meeting people who are in integrity, like that means something to them. It's a different texture to the engagement.
you're talking about righteousness versus evil, because there's one thing to say animalistic, somebody that's in an animal nature, but I don't believe that you can have a higher conscious and still be in an animal nature. So once you get to that level of like higher conscious and you're still doing wrong and you're you're acting on it, that's evil. And what you're
Yeah.
when you're saying integral people, integral, I'm not even saying this word,
Integral.
integral people, people with high integrity, those
Hmm.
people are people who are righteous, and it's
Yeah.
hard to it's just people of different lights. Obviously the person that has the integrity, they're brighter, the other one's more dim. But this is, I think we're a little bit over the show, but I want to end it with this. Do you have any, if you had to give your philosophy for life, what would it be?
To play, have fun. Don't forget your inner child and what brings your inner child joy. There's a lot in the world to take seriously. There's a lot of work that we have to do, inner and outside. But that fun and that play will continue to nourish the emotional habitat that you need to endure this life. So have fun, play, enjoy the people that you can laugh hard with, eat good food, dance to some music to, go out, be in nature with. That's my philosophy. Have fun, play, and also just be gentle with yourself.
That was lovely.
Thank you.
I like that. I like that. Toni Jones, thank you for coming on to the show.
Thank
It
you.
was a pleasure speaking with you. I did not know about your music prior to our podcast, so I'm glad that you wanted to come on here and it gave me an opportunity to get to know you a little bit better.
Thank you.
Anyways, thank you for being on. I'll catch you later. Have a good one. Bye.
All right. Peace.